And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
During today's disastrous White House press briefing, Donald Trump's White House press secretary and MAGA snowflake, Karoline Leavitt, became visibly triggered and lashed out at a reporter when he dared to fact-check her lies about the Trump tariffs. And she also admitted, among other things, that it might be 6 months before the American people see any change in price on the skyrocketing cost of eggs. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I want to start with this one first. Karoline Leavitt, again, is the kind of the culmination of the Trump MAGA press secretary evolution, so to speak. It began with Sean Spicer, went to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and now Kayleigh McEnany, who then went on to be a Fox News host. And Karoline Leavitt is by far the most MAGA of even those MAGA press secretaries, more cruel and capricious and combative by far than even McEnany, right, who has a degree of civility about her. So it's really fun to see Karoline Leavitt get schooled in real time and get publicly triggered by an Associated Press reporter, and we're going to watch this exchange and unpack it together.
When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious for why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people, and the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have.
They
don't get charged on foreign companies, they get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press. Mary, go ahead.
What a snowflake. What a snowflake. Karoline Leavitt, once again, living up to the MAGA reputation. They are the ultimate snowflakes, the ultimate in fragile egos. Of course, the reporter is right. Tariffs are ultimately paid by the end consumer, not simply those importing the goods themselves, right? That because they in turn pass them off to the American consumer, which is why the economy is in free fall right now and why so many people are pissed off at Trump and why Trump's polling on the economy is so disastrous, particularly for him and a Republican president in general. But as bad as that was, again, the snowflakery there was also this admission, right? And again, consider it relatively conservative, knowing how dishonest this administration is. But Karoline Leavitt effectively saying that it could be 6 months before we see any sort of price change in the skyrocketing cost of eggs.
Secretary Rollins put out a 4-point plan, to address this crisis. And she has been honest and realistic with the American people, as this administration always is. It will take about 3 to 6 months to get the egg supply back to where it should be. But she's focused, and this administration is focused on doing that every day.
You see the nervousness there, right? Trying to deliver that news. Of course, that's terrible news, right? I imagine the administration's going to see a lot of public pushback and backlash as these 6 months unfold. And it's entirely possible that at the end, we still won't see any sort of meaningful price reduction as well. So again, disastrous so far for Karoline Leavitt. I've got a couple more clips here to play, and both of them concern whether or not Trump bears any sort of responsibility for the failing economy, which of course he does, right? Because they're tied directly to his capricious trade war. Again, we see an on-again, off-again, hot-cold relationship with our two biggest trading partners, Canada and Mexico, because of Donald Trump. He can't make his mind up. First it's a 25% tariff, then he calls it off, then for a month, then he reimposes them, then he pauses them for some industries, then he pauses them for more industries, then he announces a 50% tariff. It's all contributing to a fog, a miasma of uncertainty, and that's a direct consequence of Trump's own actions. So we're going to play these back-to-back clips in which Karoline Leavitt is pressed about whether Trump is responsible for this.
Karen.
Thanks, Caroline. Just back on the markets, you said that what we're seeing this week right now on Wall Street is a snapshot of a moment in time. But does the president think he bears any responsibility for the turmoil in the stock market this week?
Look, the president is unwavering in his commitment to restore American manufacturing and global dominance, and I think he doubled down on that this morning with his new statement and the tariffs that will be implemented tomorrow.
Yeah, so again, disastrous response. Of course, Trump is responsible for it in his actions if he intends to double down on it. Are only going to make the situation worse. A similar question was posed as well, but in this time pointing out specifically that all the stock market gains that have happened under Trump have effectively been erased by Trump's own actions. What do you say about that?
What we're seeing this week right now on Wall Street is a snapshot of a moment in time. But does the president think he bears any responsibility for the turmoil in the stock market this week?
Look, the president is unwavering in his commitment to restore American manufacturing and global dominance, and I think he doubled down on that this morning with his new statement and the tariffs that will be implemented tomorrow on steel and aluminum.
And he has said recently he's not looking at the market. He said you can't really watch the stock market, but all of the gains since Election Day have been erased in the S&P 500. At what point, how far do stocks have to fall before the president considers it a factor and changes course?
Again, as I just said, the president will look out for Wall Street and for Main Street, just like he did in his first term, and people on Wall Street and Main Street should bet on this president. He's doing what's right for this country.
Except it's not reflected in the polls, it's not reflected in his approval rating, and it's quite frankly not even reflected in his past performance. He inherited a really good economy from President Obama. Most of his economic successes were mere continuations of Obama-era economic trends that he allowed to persist, right? And then, of course, in his fourth year, he drove it all into the ground. Really, before that, I mean, he was deficit spending to hell and back, so that wasn't exactly fiscally responsible. He triggered a painful and unnecessary trade war with China, which screwed over American farmers. And then, of course, there was his mismanagement of COVID, which led to a recession and economic turmoil. That happened on Trump's watch, so I'm not exactly sure why Karoline Leavitt would cite Donald Trump's past performance. That seems to be, if anything, an indictment of his economic management skills. Another clip here is about Elon Musk and Doge, and in terms of fraud that is supposedly being found by Doge. We're going to play this full clip and unpack it together.
Musk yesterday, he said that there is $500 to $700 billion in waste and fraud and entitlement spending. He called it, quote, the big one to eliminate. Earlier this month, he also referred to Social Security as a Ponzi scheme. Should Americans expect changes, big changes, to Social Security and Medicare?
President Trump has been unequivocally clear on this. He is going to protect Social Security and Medicare benefits and Medicaid for hardworking Americans who paid into these entitlement programs and deserve those hard-earned benefits. And unfortunately, the mainstream media has taken Mr. Musk out of context. I saw a Bloomberg headline that our team actually worked on getting updated and fixed because it was so wrong, and it took Mr. Musk out of context. What he was specifically referring to cutting was the waste and the fraud and abuse that does exist in these programs. According to an IG report from the Social Security Administration, there's more than $70 billion of fraud in the Social Security program alone that we know of. And so the president will continue to protect these programs for hardworking Americans, and actually cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse out of these programs will protect it for hardworking Americans.
But Caroline, respectfully, he said around $500 to $700 billion. There was no evidence to claim that, and also if that is the case, that would represent more than a third of what Social Security paid out last year, maybe 20% of Social Security and Medicare.
Again,
combined.
if you read his full quote, he said, we think. So it's an estimate based on what he's seen. He's not saying definitively. He's saying that's what Doge suspects and thinks. And that's exactly why Doge was created.
Doge is wildly unpopular. Doge has been seen by the American people to be clownish, corrupt, replete with corrupt incentives, and answers like this don't really reassure the American people at all. Okay, there might be $70 billion. Again, you haven't substantiated that, but that's 10 times less than what was originally proffered. Oh, well, he's just giving an estimate. Okay, well, presumably he has even some reason to provide such an estimate, and he's not pulling numbers out of his ass, and it sounds like it's exactly what he did based on your tepid, anemic response and defense of his answer. So yeah, there you have it. Another bad day for Karoline Leavitt. Donald Trump's, again, his, I would say, ultimate press secretary in the sense that she is by far the most in line with what Donald Trump is specifically looking for. But again, MAGA snowflake, to be sure, lashing out at reporters who ask her questions that she doesn't like, and it's funny to watch her implode behind the lectern. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.